Everybody. Welcome to our webinar for today, 4 Pillars of Product Thinking. We're going to go ahead and give a few more minutes for people to join us. So while we're waiting, we'd love if you pop into the chat and share where you're joining us from today. Oh my gosh, I just opened the chat and I'm seeing Nigeria, Dubai, Florida. We are really getting a global audience today, which is great to see. Canada, DC, I believe you're in DC, aren't you, Valerio, or just outside of it?
Absolutely. It's so excited. A lot of people participating.
Yes, it's great to see. Texas, Colorado. I am also in Colorado, just a little bit further north than Aurora, though. It's finally nice weather here. We keep having fall spring, so we'll get really nice weather and then a little bit of snow just to remind us of where we're at. So we've had some nice weather for a little bit, which has been really, really much appreciated. All right. So I think people are still joining, but we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. My name is Molly, and I am a part of the team at Scrum Alliance. And I am incredibly excited to welcome you to today's webinar, 4 Pillars of Product Thinking. So some of you may be Scrum Alliance members. Some of you may not know who Scrum Alliance is. So if you don't know, Scrum Alliance is a 501c6 nonprofit that provides Agile certifications across the world. We were established in 2001. And since we were established, we have awarded over 1,876,000 certifications across the globe. And our mission is to advance real-world agility by equipping and inspiring the change maker in everyone. As a Scrum Alliance member, you become a member after you earn a Scrum Alliance certification. You have access to an array of really great member benefits, including access to our learning journey, our global community. You get discounts to our regional and global Scrum gatherings. You also get access to the Retrium retrospective tool, as well as a suite of comparative agility tools, including the comparative agility tool, the Scrum Master personal improvement tool, and the product owner personal improvement tool, depending on which certifications you have. So today, our wonderful host is Valerio Zanini. He is one of our certified Scrum trainers. And I will just hand it over to you, Valerio, to kick us off.
Thank you, Molly. It's nice to be here. And it's nice to see so many people also join today. That's awesome. From around the United States for sure, but I see people from Canada as well, and maybe from the rest of the world. I just do a quick spot check of the participants. So hello everybody, my name is Valerio Zanini. I am a certified Scrum trainer with Scrum Alliance, and I am also a product management trainer and consultant. So I help organizations adopt Agile, Scrum, and product management practices, and I help them learn and improve on these practices. I started my journey many years ago working in small companies and then in larger companies. I even started a startup company and then later we sold. So I've been in product management space for my entire career. And most recently, I run a consulting company here in Washington, DC. And that's what I do. I work with organizations, small and large, helping them learn and adopt Agile and product management practices. In today's conversation, I would like to talk about product thinking, and I'm gonna get started by poking your mind with a question, and the question is, what do Zoom, Shopify, and Pinterest have in common? They clearly are different companies, they offer different products, but what do they have in common? What comes to mind? So I'm gonna offer maybe a few thoughts here, maybe a few suggestions of what comes to mind about these companies. They are digital companies. They offer digital tools. Each one of them has a $20+ billion market cap on the public stock market. Each one of them lost a ton of money in stock value during the pandemic, and now they are coming back. So they have in common, but that's not why I'm sharing these names. The reason I'm talking about these companies is because they are product-led companies. What does it mean to be a product-led company? Well, there are at least three key ingredients to a product-led company. The first one is that they offer incredible products that deliver on the value that they promised. And in particular, they have a relentless focus on the needs and desires of the users. Product-led organizations also move fast. They have a culture of collecting contextual feedback, and they use this feedback for rapid validation of new ideas and rapid innovation. And all of this is driven by cross-functional teams that replace the monofunctional teams. When you have a monofunctional team, you tend to have a specialization in the team, but it also creates dependencies with other teams in the organization, other part of the organization, and also creates boundaries. But if you want to move fast, you want to innovate and move fast, you need to remove this dependency as much as possible and remove these boundaries by creating cross-functional teams. For product-led companies, product is everything because it's the product that promotes the product itself. And it all starts with product thinking. And that is the focus of this conversation today. And in particular, there are four fundamental pillars to product thinking. We are going to look at them, starting with the first one, deep understanding of the problem space and the customer needs. The second pillar is rapid validation of new ideas and solutions before commitment to a full development of a solution. The third one is a measurement of outcomes that define value metrics. And the fourth pillar is a customer experience, creating a customer experience that supports retention and referrals. We're going to talk about why each one of these is important and what product managers and product owners can do to support each one of these pillars. So let's get started with the first one, deep understanding of the problem space and customer needs. Now, we are all product owners and product managers here. I think we all understand. We've been talking at length about the need to understand the customers, understand the problem space, and so on. So I don't want to talk about how we do that. I would like to talk more about why this is important. So I'm going to share a few thoughts on this. And the first one is that customers don't buy a product. They buy a solution to their needs and desires. Nobody goes around to an Apple store and they ask for a piece of glass and some silicone so they can have a pound more that they carry around in their back pocket as they go around the day. They buy a phone or whatever other product because they want a solution to their needs and desire, and the product they identified is the best option, the best vehicle to actually achieve that solution. So really, as product owners and product managers, our job should start by understanding the needs and the desires, because if you're not clear, there is not really a good solution that we can build. In fact, we should start with understanding why customers care, why customers are seeking a solution, why is that solution important for them, and all these kind of things. And as much as we want to rationalize this thinking, as much as we want to write it down into requirement documents, for example, and we want to create a list of features and all these kind of things, really, at the end of the story, customers are seeking a solution for their most important needs and problem to solve. And in fact, I would like to share this quote from Alan Dibb, who is a marketing expert. Purchasing is done with emotions and justified with logic after the fact. If you buy a Ferrari and you come home and your partner, husband, wife, whatever, ask you, hey, what did you do? Your answer probably is going to be, oh, I needed a faster car, I needed a bigger engine, I needed more horsepower. So you're going to justify the purchase with logic and with the list of features that that product offers you. But the reality is you probably purchased that Ferrari because it made you feel cool. And that is completely an emotional decision. And you can apply the same logic to many other products, including an iPhone or any other thing that you may have in your life. So purchasing is done with emotions and justified with logic after the fact. So as part of the job of the product owner and product manager is really to understand what are these emotions, because if we can tackle into them, then we can promote, we can build a better product for our customers. We can help them really solve their needs and achieve their potential. Many companies do this well. And for example, one of them is Pinterest. Now, when you go to Pinterest, the website doesn't talk about a list of features, doesn't tell you how many photos you can post, or doesn't tell you how many people that can look at your post and so on, or how many users are there. They don't say any like that. They clearly tackle into your emotion and emotional needs. Everybody has the need of thinking about what am I going to do tonight for dinner? And Pinterest clearly satisfied that need with a clear message. We get you your next weeknight dinner idea. A similar thing is done by Uber. Uber doesn't talk about GPS tracking, about automatic payment with credit card, about the number of cars they have available in the city where you are, or the wait time, or whatever. They talk clearly about the need of the customer and how Uber is going to benefit the customer. With Uber, you can go anywhere. Just get started here. And this is true not only for consumer products, but also for business products, B2B. So here is an example from Chubb, which is an insurance company. They offer insurance to businesses. And they don't talk about the features of the insurance, the premiums, the savings, or whatever. They talk about the benefit that their product offers to their customers. Protect your business, stay a step ahead. So when we look at the work that we do as product owners and product managers, very often we tend to fall into the world of activities. This is our day-to-day job of product owners. We need to build features, we need to work on specification, we work on requirements, we need to build the solutions. These are all activities, all things that we need to do. And what these activities result in, they result in outputs. We generate a lot of outputs, a bunch of outputs. Now, nobody says that these outputs are not good. They may be great. But also, we don't know if these outputs are the right outputs for our customers. So we need to be mindful that just generating output may not solve the customer problem. And instead of being in the world of activities, we should be in the world of behaviors. In particular, we should understand the customer so we can drive changes to human behavior, we can solve problems, and ultimately we can deliver value to our customers. When you think about this, these are all outcomes. And these are the outcomes that we should be focusing on. These are the outcomes that the customers expect us to deliver. So the question now becomes, how do we shift our mindset from the world of activities to the world of behaviors? How do we shift our focus from generating outputs to delivering outcomes? I'm going to share a few thoughts on this and a few techniques throughout the rest of the presentation. For product teams to successfully adopt product thinking and deliver innovative products, it is necessary a deep understanding of the outcomes expected by both customers and the business. We're going to talk about the two different outcomes, the customer outcomes and the business, and what is the difference and where should we focus. If we don't start from that deeper understanding, if we don't have a clear understanding, what are the outcomes that our customers expect us to deliver to them, and what are the outcomes that our business expects us to deliver with our product, we risk of falling into the world of activities and generating a bunch of outputs. And really what the risk is that we embark in huge projects without clear goals, and we end up in feature factory mode. And as much as we talk about these topics, unfortunately, that's still reality. It's when teams spend 6 months writing a product requirement document, and then they give it to a Scrum team for implementation. They pretend to be agile, but the reality is that everything has been set up front, and all the work that the Scrum team is doing is basically generating a bunch of output. And maybe the outcomes are not even defined, or there is no clear goal in end. It's just a bunch of work that we're going to generate. Let's talk about the mindset a little bit more. As product people, as product owners and product managers, and I can certainly relate to that, we like to build stuff. We like to find solutions. We like to build products. We like to build solutions. So it's actually very rewarding when you work with your developing team and you build a product and you finally bring it to life. It's actually very rewarding. So it's so much fun, right? It's part of the fun of the job. And so we tend, as soon as we are faced with a new project idea, or we are faced with a new problem, we tend to jump into, let me think about what we can do. What is the solution here? How can we solve this problem? What is the list of features that we could build? That is inside out thinking. Instead, to really embrace an outcome-driven product development, to change to the world of behaviors, we should employ an outside-in thinking. Knowing that the ideas that we may have, features and so on, could be cool, but they may not be the only ones available or possible. And so we should park those for a second, and instead get out there. Take a Gemba walk. Go out and talk with the customers, understand the customer's point of view, understand the customer perspective, understand the market perspective, and so on. And maybe out of this broader context understanding, now we are able to generate new ideas, and then we can bring in and start deciding, planning, prioritizing, and so on. Now, this is opening up our space to potentially be more successful, because now we can understand the customer perspective, and we can understand more the outcomes that they care about. So for us product owners, it's actually very important to shift from an inside-out thinking to an outside-in thinking and really adopt the mindset. Different techniques exist. One of them is employing design thinking techniques. This really forces us to be out there and connect with customers. So that was the first pillar of customer focus, and really shifting our thinking into an outcome focus, customer focus, outside-in thinking mindset. The second pillar of product thinking is about rapid validation. The idea here is that whenever we have a new idea, a new solution, we should stop for a second, find a way to validate whether or not that idea is actually potentially a good idea or not before we commit to a full development. A full development is going to be expensive and costly, time-wise, money-wise. So we should probably validate a little bit before we commit to that. If you are in the world of activities, where we build features, we work on specification requirements and so on, how do we typically measure results? Well, we make a plan for the new features, and after we have defined those features, maybe we even started building some of these, we define metrics, and then we start measuring whether the feature is working or not. And then we identify those outcomes. Basically, what are the results that we are observing? Notice that in order to do that, we need to build a feature, which is after the fact, basically. So now we are potentially delaying the learning by weeks or months, because it depends how long it takes to build a feature. And we don't know if that is working and if it is the right thing for our customers until the end. In product thinking, we want to flip it. So starting from the world of behavior, where we are focusing on outcomes, the question becomes, how do we measure results? Where the thinking process goes the other way around. So instead of starting from building a list of features, we start by understanding what are the outcomes that we want to deliver. What is the end result the customer wants to achieve? What is the need that we need to solve for them? And once we are clear on those outcomes, then we should ask ourselves the question, how do we measure this? How do we measure if we are able to deliver that outcome? How do we measure if we are able to solve the need? How do we know that? So we do this upfront work, and then we decide what new features do we build to deliver the outcome. Or even better, what is the hypothesis behind a new feature? For example, what do we think is the best way to deliver that outcome? It is an assumption that we are making, or an hypothesis, that if we build that feature, then the customers will be able to solve that problem. In fact, we can even write that as an hypothesis statement. If we allow people to do whatever the feature allows them to do, then we will observe an expected result. And that is the outcome that the customers expect to get from that feature of that tool. We do this at the beginning, before we even start writing a line of code, or maybe even before we even have a backlog. This is all about understanding what the expectations, what outcomes the customers care about, and give us a little bit of space to really understand not only the expectation, but also how do we know whether or not we are delivering on that. Then we can jump into the lean startup cycle. So we have the outcome, we have the metric, we have the hypothesis of a new feature. Now we can define an MVF, a minimum viable feature, or a minimum viable product. The goal here is to test the MVF or the MVP as soon as possible, as quickly as possible, and check if we deliver the outcome. If we do, then we keep building, and when we commit to building the whole thing, and then we deliver that. If we don't, then we switch. We find a different idea. Maybe we find a different feature, different solution. We scratch the whole thing and start over, right? But if we do this as quick as possible, there is very little waste at this point. So basically the idea is that we want to run experiments, validate and iterate on these experiments. Notice that the focus is not on delivery, but the focus is on testing a hypothesis. As an example, that's what Dyson did, or the founder of Dyson. Before he was able to succeed with the Dyson vacuum cleaner, which by now is kind of we know it's a success, but when he created that, nobody knew about that. And in fact, he had to build 5,127 prototypes, and 5,126 of these failed. But he learned from them, and then finally he became Mr. Dyson, the one we know today. One tool that can be helpful in kind of shifting the mindset and starting from a hypothesis point of view is using the MVP Ideation Canvas. It's a template. You can download it from the website. You can scan the QR code that is shown on the screen. And it helps to start thinking about the hypothesis and the key measures before you commit to building any new feature or any new product. So when you do that, planning is no longer based on features to deliver. Remember, that is, all the features are outputs, and outputs may or may not be valuable. So planning is no longer based on features to deliver. Instead, planning is based on objectives and outcomes to achieve. And of course, hopefully these are valuable for the customers if you've done our due diligence before. One example of using objectives plans is OKRs, or creating an objective-based roadmap. And then the job is to determine what features to build using the experiment, validate, and iterate process we saw that earlier for rapid validation and rapid testing. All right, so that was the second pillar. Let's go to the third one. That is measurement of outcomes, because so far we've been talking about outcomes, but how do we measure them and how do we find the value metrics that will allow us to know if you are delivering those outcomes? Let's be on the same page first. What is an outcome? So an outcome is a measurable result that your product or service delivers to your customers and business. You can measure that in terms of value delivered, or maybe in terms of behavior change. Notice that all of this is grounded in solving needs, the customer needs, and solving problems for them, right? What really understanding at the emotional level what the customers need. There are two types, in general, there are two types of outcomes. One is the business outcomes. For example, return over investment, or increasing stock price, or increasing market share, profitability, increasing revenue, and so on. These are all business outcomes. Of course, they are important. After all, we work for a business, we build a product for a business. We will not be in business long if we did not deliver business outcome. So of course, these are important. The second type of outcomes are the customer outcomes. And these are outcomes the customers care about. For example, solving their needs, solving a problem, deliver an experience, creating a new opportunity for the customers, and so on. Now, when customers buy a product, do they care more about customer outcomes or business outcomes? When I go on Amazon.com, do they care about the ROI or the stock price or the market share that Amazon.com has? Or do I care about the availability of products and the time it will take for the product to come to me so that I can find it quickly, I can get it quickly, and I can start using it? My point is, of course, business outcomes are important, but if we don't deliver on the customer outcomes, we will not be in business long. So the work should always start by understanding the customer outcomes first. And that is true also for internal products, where you may not have a customer per se, you may have an internal user, but that is true for them as well. We need to understand the internal user outcomes if you want to build a great product. So let's take an example here. I want to take an example of Uber Eats. Let's imagine that we are a little bit in the past, and that's when Uber started thinking about this new opportunity of creating Uber Eats. And they certainly could look at that as an opportunity to generate new business outcomes. For example, an opportunity to expand in an adjacent market, increase market cap and stock value by expanding into this new service, prevent competition. Let's do this before other companies beat us to the market. And also, for us, Uber, we already have a huge network of drivers and cars that go around, so we can leverage that existing network to scale our business and introduce new services. So these are all possible business outcomes that Uber can get with Uber Eats. But now let's look at the customer outcomes. What does a customer get by using Uber Eats? Well, first of all, they get food delivered at their location whenever they need it. That's a huge value proposition for the customer. They don't need to drive. They don't need to find transportation. They may be sick or whatever. They can get food delivered at their location whenever they need it. For the customer, in particular, the user, the Uber driver, that's an additional opportunity for increasing their earning revenue potential, because now they can get more money and they get paid when they deliver food as well. For customers, it's also an opportunity to expand the number of available food delivery options. Sometimes only a few restaurants offer in-house delivery services, but now with Uber Eats, we can potentially get food delivery from any restaurant using our network of drivers. And in fact, we can get delivery from the restaurant that don't offer it yet, and we just offer that additional option, which, by the way, becomes another opportunity for the restaurants themselves to increase their revenue. So there are a number of customer outcomes that Uber Eats generates. And I mentioned that briefly earlier. When we look at business outcomes and customer outcomes, which type of outcome is more important? We should start with the customer outcomes, because if you don't deliver on the customer outcomes, there is really no business outcome we can generate. Now, when you think about this, business outcomes mostly come from inside out thinking. We look at the business, we look at our mechanics, inner working of the business, identify new opportunities, whereas the customer outcomes really come from outside in thinking. That's another reason why we need to employ outside in thinking if we want to really understand the customer outcomes that we want to generate. So now the question becomes, how do we establish the right type of metrics to measure the product performance? Because when you can Google this, when you look at different research papers and so on, or you ask some businesses, some companies, traditionally companies tend to measure too many metrics to begin with. In fact, often for any product, there is a range of between 100 to 2,000 metrics that get measured. Unfortunately, many of these are unrelated to the real product performance. And when I talk about real product performance, is answering the question, are we delivering customer outcomes? And if a metric is not able to answer that question, that's not a useful metric. So we mentioned earlier, moving from the world of activities, generating a lot of outputs, to the world of behaviors, generating outcomes for our customers in the business. I'm going to invite you to reflect that it's going to be useful to stop measuring the amount of work delivered. That's just measuring output. There is no value measurement here, just amount of work delivered. I would invite teams to actually stop doing that. One example is velocity. Velocity is not a measure of output, is not a measure of value, is not a measure of outcomes. It's just a planning measure. Instead, what we should be doing is start measuring outcomes, customer outcomes first, and then business outcomes. And once you do that, it becomes much more clear what are the metrics that we should be measuring, because they are connected to these outcomes. In fact, we can make the distinction between vanity metrics and value metrics. When you look at that number, 100 to 2,000 different metrics that many companies have on a given product, I would argue probably many of them are vanity metrics, things that we measure just because we can, or things that we measure just because they make us feel good, but they have no real impact for the customer or for the business. The other metric, the type of metric, is the value metric. That is really what moves the business forward and measure impact. So where do the value metrics come from? You guess it right. They come from a clear understanding of the outcomes. That's why we want to start our job from there. Let's be clear about what are the outcomes the customers care about, what are the outcomes that we need to deliver. Once we are clear about these outcomes, then we establish the metrics that we need to use to measure. And then we go into feature ideation, feature validation, feature development. All right, so there was number 3. And then we have one more pillar. And this pillar is also very important for creating a product the customers love, and that is about creating a customer experience that support retention and referrals. Now let's dig a little bit on this topic. For some of you may be familiar if you come from a marketing background, for example, but this is actually very relatable to the work and to the decisions that product owners and product managers need to make on their product. So in general, for a given product, and this is especially true for digital online products, there is a funnel. It's called an acquisition funnel that goes through different steps. Typically starts with acquisition, so getting the customer to come to our website, to our tool, to our store, and then it goes to activation, so people signing up, and then revenue, people paying, and then people coming back, that's retention, and then referral, people inviting other users to come back. For any given business, acquisition, of course, is important, right? Because if we don't get customers through the front door, I mean, there is nothing we can do, right? We need to get customers through the front door. And we need also to convert them to active customers. Now, unfortunately, there is a faulty logic here that is sometimes very challenging. And let me explain that to you all. When we look at that funnel, the idea is that the more customers that come into the funnel, the more money we make. It's like there is a formula here, right? If we get 1,000 customers, we get $1,000 or whatever, right? So the more customers we get, the more money we make. That in general is true. However, the problem is churn. Because churn is basically the customers that we lose. So we got the customer, they bought our product, they will not come back to renew or to buy it again, and so on. And the problem is when churn becomes higher than the customer acquisition, we lose more customers than we get. So the product itself is not sustainable. How do we overcome this problem? Well, typically, that's where the marketing budget comes from or is used. We need to expand the top of the funnel. So we need to attract more customers, trying to enlarge the funnel. We are still losing some customers along the way, but if we can get more, well, maybe that's a good thing. But what really this means is that we end up spending a ton of money on marketing, sales, and so on. We need to spend enough money so that we can increase the acquisition rate to become higher than the churn rate. This gives us a false sense of sustainability because, yes, we start generating new customers, we start generating new money. The problem is that we are spending a ton of money to bring these customers in. So the product itself is not sustainable. Let me share with you a quote from HubSpot. Today, customer referrals and word of mouth have become the largest influence on the purchase process, which means the funnel has one major flaw. It views customers as an afterthought, not as a driving force. You see, funnels produce customers, but don't consider how those customers can help you grow. So we need to flip the thinking here, and we need to focus at the bottom of the funnel. In fact, we need to focus on retention. And here is the reason. Acquiring customers in general, for any given business is an expensive activity. You have marketing, you have promotion, you have a sales team, and so on. So acquisition of the customer is an expensive activity. If you don't have retention, so your customers don't come back, you always need to acquire new customers. Every relationship is a one-time relationship. You get the customer, you sell to them, and then they're gone. And you keep spending money to get the next customer. Instead, if your customers keep coming back, now that removes a lot of pressure, because now you don't tend to spend not so much money, at least, on marketing activities, advertising, sales, and so on, because your customers already exist. They are so happy about your product that they keep coming back. That is retention. But even better, when your customers keep coming back, it's because they love your product, because your product is solving their need over and over time. So they keep coming back, and now they're probably becoming ambassadors of your own product. So they, your customers, they will go around and promote your product for you. They do that for free. So now it becomes referral. These are the two most important metrics you should be measuring. Because if you are not able to increase retention or you're not able to increase referrals, you end up spending a ton of money on marketing, and you have a top of the funnel is very large, bottom of the funnel is very small, and you're going to have a huge churn. Instead, you want to flip the thing. You want to increase retention and referral. So let's look a little bit at how to do that. Customer retention is a company's ability to keep the customers over time. I think we spoke about this, and it means that customers tend to return to purchase or to continue using a product or service. Why? Because they find it valuable. Why they find it valuable? Because your product solves their problem in a better way than anything else available outside can do. And so it generates the outcomes that your customers want. Now, there is a concept in economics and in marketing. It's called lifetime value, and I think it's important for product manager and for product owners to know about this as well. Lifetime value is basically a metric that estimates how much revenue a customer will generate for you over the course of their relationship with the business. So how much money is a typical customer going to spend during their lifetime as a customer for your product? And if that lifetime value, the money that they bring in, is less than the money you spend on promoting your product, then your product is unsustainable. So you want to find ways to reduce the money you spend on the product, increase the lifetime value, so now it becomes sustainable and profitable. Retention, if you're able to increase retention of your customers, that extends the lifetime value because the customers keep coming back for longer. So now retention extends lifetime value, reduces the churn rate, and also increases referral. And the referral establish a positive engine because they drive acquisition, they reduce the dollar spent in marketing and sales, and they act as an accelerator. Now the product is sustainable. In fact, you should first build a retention and referral engine to make sure that the product becomes sustainable before you start spending on marketing. Because if you do that, every dollar you spend on marketing then multiplies by itself with additional business. And now the product is doing marketing for you. Think about Apple, the iPhone. Yes, Apple has a marketing budget, they spend on advertising and so on. But Apple customers keep coming back and they keep referring to other people and so on. I have many friends that keep telling me to buy an Apple phone instead of my Android. So they are acting as referrals. Zoom is another example. It grew organically with very little spend from the company itself. Fitbit, Tesla doesn't do any advertising. So these are all examples of great products that are doing marketing for the company itself. Now, what drives retention? So I have a little bit of a cheat sheet. Is not the number of features. There are so many products that are full with features, so many features, but all these features do not make the product more valuable. So stop thinking about features. Instead, you should think about the outcomes. So what drives retention? The product deliver customer outcomes. Maybe it only does a couple of things, but it does these two things very well, and that's what the customers care about. The customer experience is A+. Quality is a table stake today in any given product, and people expect to enjoy using a product. They want a customer experience that is A+. And in general, the customer mind does an automatic calculation when they need to decide whether or not to purchase a product. Is the value that I'm going to receive from it higher than what I perceive is going to be my cost of acquisition? And the cost of acquisition is not only the money I'm going to spend, but also maybe the time or effort to learn the new product, or maybe I need to transition from an old way of doing things to a new way of doing things. So there is some friction there. All of that is the cost of acquisition. I'm going to do that only if I perceive that the value I will receive from the new product is going to be bigger than my cost. So these are all important considerations as you're thinking about new product development. This is what the product owners and product managers should think about more than just the next feature to build. So I want to share a couple of more thoughts here before closing on this fourth pillar. One interesting study was done a few years ago by Bain and Company. They interviewed customers of very successful products, and they asked these customers what value were they getting from the product. And they organize all the different answers, and they realized that there were a lot of functional values, things that the product was doing for the customer. But as you see on this pyramid, customers were also getting emotional values, life-changing and social impact values. In fact, in the study, they realized that the more the product offered values higher in the pyramid, the more that product was successful in the market. Which really connects to what we were talking about earlier, that customers don't buy a product, they buy a solution to their needs, and that purchase is often driven by emotional reasons. That's why as you build a product, you want to consider emotional values, life-changing values, and social impact values that your product may be able to deliver to your customers. A lot of companies do this very well today, and that's why their products are so successful. And then I'd like to share a few thoughts on the customer experience. We said earlier that it's not so much the features, but it's more like the customer experience that they get from your product that really makes them make a decision on your product. There are some core elements to delivering a great customer experience. I listed them here. The first one, of course, the product needs to deliver on the customer's desired outcomes. I buy a product because I want to get a result. If the product doesn't give me that result, I'm not happy, I'm out. Right? So that's the table stake is given. That's why we need to start from the outcomes. But customers today also want to feel somehow connected to the product they're building and to the mission of your company. So it's important to describe your why. Why are you doing that? Why are you offering that product or that service? You need to make the product usable and intuitive to use. So good design, very, very important. That's another table stake here, is a core element of customer experience. You also need to remove friction. So there should be some low walls in terms of like registration, acquisition, verification, registration, all these kind of things. It should be easy to be able to create an account, log in, get up to speed. That's why you see a lot of companies today with the onboarding training, onboarding tools, and this kind of thing, because they just try to make it easier for the customers. And then another core element is make it easy for your customers to refer other customers or to invite friends. Again, this drives into the retention, which is a core element of your product success. So these are all the core elements you need to have to deliver a great customer experience. I would like to add a few more. In particular, you should deliver an instantaneous aha moment. Some companies try to get into the first 10-second window to deliver that aha moment. Meaning you get the product in your hand, you open the package, in the first 10 seconds you say, oh wow, that's so cool. For example, you open the package, a new phone, press the power button, and the phone turns on and say hi or hello. Right? That is a aha moment, kind of unexpected, and that immediately created an emotional connection. I mentioned that earlier, action-focused product onboarding tool that makes the learning of a new product much easier, removes friction, and makes the cost of acquisition go down for the product. Personalize the user experience for different types of users. That is something you see more and more in many products. For example, Tesla cars, or other cars as well. As you sit in your seat, you can click a button and personalize the car based on your own personal preferences. They could be different from somebody else. Easy access to support when needed without silos. Everybody hates when you have a problem, you cannot find help, or to get help, you need to call 15 times customer support, get jumped from one agent to another, and just a gigantic waste of time. That doesn't deliver a great customer experience. It makes very hard for customers to refer other friends to your business. You want to deliver a great customer experience, you need to make it easier for them to get the help they need when they need it. And then finally, use data. We are in a data-driven world today. Use data to understand the usage and remove bottlenecks. There are many analytics platforms today, data available across many different places. We can track so many different things, but really use that data to understand where the customers stumble, where do they have difficulties in using the product or accessing it or leveraging some of the functionality, and use that to remove the bottlenecks. All right, so let's just put everything together, just as a quick summary of what we spoke about. We said 4 pillars of product thinking. Customers don't buy a product, they buy a solution to their needs and desires. Use outside-in thinking to validate hypotheses and rapidly decide what to build. Great products deliver value. We know what value we are delivering and how to measure it. And then build out a customer experience that supports retention and referrals. Hopefully these are the key takeaways from today's conversation. I hope it was useful for everybody. I'm happy to stay connected if you want to reach out for comments, questions, and here is my information to connect. All right, thank you. And Molly, I think we have some time for a Q&A, right? For some questions.
Yes, we do. We have a few minutes for Q&A, and just really quickly, in case anybody does have to drop off, we will be sending out a recording of this webinar tomorrow, so keep an eye on your inbox, and we will also be sending out a link to claim your SEU, your Scrum Education Unit, for attending this webinar. So let's dive into the Q&A. So if your product has a paradigm shift compared to its competitors, any tips on how to make it intuitive and easy to use, and or personalized onboarding?
Yeah, so I would, so of course, maybe depends on the situation, right? But in general, I would run some usability testing sessions with customers and put them in front of the product and see how they react. and collect feedback, contextual feedback from the customers, basically doing some interviews, some observations, see how they react, see where they stumble upon. You can visualize this with a customer journey map, for example, and then use that map to highlight the pain points and the bottlenecks in the customer experience, and those becomes the areas of focus for your next development or your enhancements.
All right. Our next question is, how do you deliver an instantaneous aha moment if it's a service like insurance?
That's interesting, and I don't work in insurance, so I don't know, but I can tell you it doesn't matter probably the type of industry. You can still deliver an instantaneous aha moment. For example, one company maybe in a connected industry is Rocket Mortgage. Rocket Mortgage was a pioneer of opening or making it easier to open mortgages for new house purchases. And one of the first things they do is that you get a quote right away. Right? Again, I don't know if it is 10 seconds, but the point is very quickly you can get a quote from that company. Maybe that could be something to do in insurance as well, right? What is your problem? Here is a quote. Now let's talk, right? Maybe there could be a aha moment.
All right, as we know, artificial intelligence is a huge part of the conversation in the world of work right now. So how do you see AI amplifying the problem-solving, customer insights, and test cycles of product customer value delivery and analysis?
Yeah, AI is a hot technology, and of course it is opening up a lot of new opportunities, and especially in terms of like multiplying the ability of us humans to process data and generate insight and these kind of things. There are many use cases under exploration right now by startup companies and big companies in trying to figure out how can we use AI to help people create better products. And of course, I think it all starts by AI or whoever having access to the right information. And that means that it starts by really understand the customers. So it doesn't, from that point of view, it doesn't take away the job or the responsibility of the product owner, product manager, for actually connecting with the customers, understanding them, understanding what they need, understanding their problems, to drive any further analysis. Whether that's human-driven or AI-driven, that analysis is probably this discussion, but it starts by having that deeper understanding to begin with.
All right. So for a sales-led or a marketing-led organization, what should be the first step for transitioning into a product-led organization?
Yeah. So you may look at multiple things when you want to transition into a product-led organization, but a product-led organization, the product itself becomes your sales channel. And that means a focus on retention, much like we spoke about in this topic. So it really should start by understanding the customers, understanding their needs, understanding the pain points, the bottlenecks, and what is preventing them from coming back and from referring other people and so on. So it's a focus on the product itself more like than how do we sell it more? How do we make the product better?
All right, we have time for one more question. So what do we do when the outcomes expected by the customer and the business conflict with each other?
Yeah, that's a big challenge. Yeah. I don't know the answer because probably it depends again, right? In general, but if there is a misalignment between the customer outcomes and the business outcomes, that should be a big red flag. And I would like to learn more about what is it, why that is happening, what is it that we are doing, these kind of things. And maybe, and that some companies do that, is the solution is to create a new product or a new business. Sometimes big companies spin off a small startup to deal with a market need or a market change and create a new set of products, not within the main organization or under a new brand because of that conflict. One example is Netflix, that years ago invented Roku, the player. They spun off under a separate company, still is today, because it was a conflict with them selling the subscription for the streaming service.
All right, so I know we have a few more questions in the Q&A, so I'm going to pass those to you afterwards, Valerio, to try and get them answered in a written form so we can still share it with people. But we have reached our time for today. So thank you, Valerio, for an incredible webinar, and thank you to everyone for attending. We will have the recording ready to go tomorrow, and you'll receive an email with a link to review it again, and we'll still have all the resources that you can see now on your console. And for any Scrum Alliance members, we will also email you a link to claim your SEU, your Scrum Education Unit, for attending this session. So again, thank you everybody for joining us today. We are so excited to have you, and we hope to see you at our next webinar.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Molly, and thank everybody for being here.
All right.